Welcome back. Welcome back. We're up to Masechtas Chagigah, page 8b by the Mishnah. So the Mishnah starts off saying, Misha yeshloi ochle meribim. Someone who has a big family, has lots of people that he needs to feed, a lot of eating people. In a chusim utim, but he doesn't have lots of money. What should he do? So basically, the Mishnah is talking about how to divide your money. How much should you be spending on the oiler, which is the first offering? It goes totally to Hashem. And how much should you be spending on the Chagigah, which is the meat that you get to feed your family? And we have had arguments, Shammai and Hillel, on what to spend more. We've had arguments how to mix your money in, if you're allowed to mix it with the animals, meaning more animals, versus mixing the money and buying a bigger animal. Now we're coming down to, okay, so what do we do? Bottom line. So the Mishnah tells you this is how you should react. If you have lots of family, lots of people to feed, less money, then bring more Chagigah, bring more oilus, not oilus, Shalmai Chagigah, which is Ishlomim, which goes to the people to eat, to the owners, or Shalmai Simcha, which is just another offering to have more meat. The oilus meutim, and bring less for our oiler. Don't bring many oilers because you don't have lots of money. What happens if you have lots of money, a very few people to eat, and you have money, you're blessed with money, then maybe oilus meribis, bring more offerings to Hashem, bring him a bigger present, bring him more offerings, and buy just a little thing, as much people you have that can eat. So you can spend more money based on your situation, how much money you have, and based on how many people you have to feed. If you have both, you have very little, you don't have lots of money, you don't have lots of people to eat. And this is what we have learned, we learned that you have to spend the minimum, which is one, let's say 100, 200, we argument, and what do you spend more on the shlomim, more on the chagigah. That's where the argument comes in, because you don't have enough for everything. You have minimum. So if you have a minimum, then you go minimum. What happens if you have lots of money and a big family to feed? And this is what we say, Ish kematnas yudai, every person has to, as much as he wants to give, as the blessing of Hashem, your God, as to whatever he has blessed you with. He's giving you a lot, you have a big family, you have lots of money, splurge. Go out there, bring a big oiler, bring lots of shlomim, so that you feed everyone. You've been blessed. Okay, so that's the Mishnah. The Gemara is now, as normal, going to come back now and take the Mishnah piece by piece and dissect it. So we learned in the first part in the Mishnah, if you have lots of eaters and very little money, you should bring a lots of shlomim and very little oilers. The Gemara says, you just said he has no money. How is he going to feed lots of people? He said, bring lots of shlomim and less oilers, but he has no money, you said. He should bring lots of meat for the people to eat. How is he going to bring that? He doesn't have any money. Rav Chisda says, Teufel, it might be par gudel, mix in. This is where we have learned before that you're allowed to mix in. If you don't have enough money, then take master money, take some other money, mix in the other monies that you've already promised that you have to give, and have that as part of the monies that you use. Rav Shaisa said, we have learned that you have to mix in animal with animal. Pause. Very funny. The Gemara here is very encryptic. And I repeated it verbatim. I said it the way the Gemara says it so that I bring this question up. The Gemara asks right away, what is he saying here? He hasn't finished the sentence. He said, the Chisda said, you can mix in and bring a big cow. Then Avshashis comes and said, but we have learned that you have to mix the animal with animal. So the Gemara asks here, what is Rav Shasha saying? What is he saying? Is he saying that you have to mix animal with animal and you're not allowed to mix money with money? Then say clear, you cannot mix money with money. Why is he saying it in such a funny way? That we have learned that you have to mix animal with animal. What is he talking about? Okay, I want to take another step back. And what's the Gemara? What's going on here? Well, what is the Gemara doing with us here? The Gemara is giving us half sentences and then an argument they had between themselves to figure out what they themselves are saying.
What else is new?
What else is new? So what I want to come here to is this is exactly what the Gemara wants to teach us. That we will be learning things that at first makes no sense when we look at it. When we look at a certain Mishnah, or we look at something and it's out of context, like what's going on here, then we have to train our brains, get the gears spinning. Okay, when he says this statement, what does he mean by it? And this is what the Gemara is teaching us. Exactly this, that they sometimes write something in cryptic so that you would figure out that the halacha is not just one way. You can figure out by that in your situation, oh, okay, this is could be what he meant here. That's why he read it this way. You can learn between the lines as to what they have said. And this is where the Gemara is going here. What is Rav Shasha saying? Maybe he meant this. He said, we have learned that you have to mix animal with animal, and you cannot mix money with money. Then if this is what he meant, then let him say clearly, you cannot mix money with money. When Rav Chizda said up here that you should mix money and bring a big cow, so Rav Shasha says, say clearly, but you cannot mix money. You have to mix animal with animal. But he's not saying that. He's saying you have to mix animal with animal. So he doesn't mean that you cannot mix money with money, because then why didn't you say that? That would have been the proper question of Rav Chizda. So the Gemara says, this is what he's saying. He's saying, Rav Shasha isn't arguing with Rav Chizda. Rav Shasha is adding to what Rav Chizda says. Rav Shasha says, you're saying that he has to mix money and bring a big cow? I say he can also mix animal to animal. He doesn't just have to mix money to money. He can also buy another animal, include both animals together as being his ayla. So he can do both. So the Gemara is now saying, oh, okay. So maybe this is what Rav Shasha is saying, and it makes more sense because he's not arguing. He's just saying another statement. You can also include animal with animal. So the Gemara says now, if this is the case, then Rav Shasha's would not be according to anyone that what we have learned last time. When we have learned there was an argument between Chagigah and Rabbi Yochanan. One said that you have to mix money and money. You cannot mix animals with animals. And the other was on the opposite. You have to mix animal with animals. You cannot mix money with money. So now Rav Shasha says that you can do either or. It's not according to either one of them. So come on, Lord Chagigah, even Lord Rabbi Yochanan doesn't come up to both. If I'm going too fast, let me know. Either show me or just ask. So the key time. So now the Gemara is going to say, "We're good." Okay. So the Gemara now asks, "Okay, so maybe he's not according to anyone, Chagigah and Rabbi Yochanan, but there are differences here. Chagigah and Rabbi Yochanan were the next generation. They were the Amaruim. The previous generation were the Tanuim. They wrote the Mishnayos. So maybe the Chitayma Amarui the Pliga that it's only Chagigah and Rabbi Yochanan. They had arguments as to how to learn the Mishnah, but the Mishnah itself must need the Pliga. The Mishnah itself weren't any arguments. They understood that you can do both. It's only the sages later, when they learned the Mishnah, they were arguing what the Mishnah meant, this way or this way. So the Gemara asks, Vukatuna, and we have learned also in one of the Mishnahs, that the first eating that you eat has to be from chilan, from your own money, not from master money. Which this comes to apply that you have to make sure that first animal that you're eating is from Chilon. So you cannot tell me the Mishnah agreed that you can do either or. There has to be some of the Mishnah that also agrees that you cannot mix money with money, because you have to make sure the first piece of meat you eat is from your money. And that can only happen if you mix two animals together, meaning you have one that you know for sure is your money, one that you bought from master money. So you can make sure your first bite is for sure from your money. So the Gemara wanted to use this as proof, as the Mishnayos would also disagree. So the Gemara answers, no. You know what it means? The first eating has to be from your money. The amount of money that it costs, that first dish, that's how much money you have to invest into buying this animal from your own money. But the rest you can put master money, which means that the Mishnah itself also has no argument. You can use both. Mishnah itself doesn't specify if you have to mix in money with money or animal with animal. The Mishnah itself, you can do either or. It's these sages later, the Amirim, that they were arguing, Cheskiyui and Rabbi Yochanan, they were later, and they were arguing as to which way to better do it. But the Mishnah itself says either way is okay. So, bottom line, where we have come back after all these arguments, how much to spend on this, and how much to spend on this, who says what's better? The bottom line, what we take away here is everyone to their situation, do what's best for you. You have on whom to rely on. The halacha is flexible either way, and it depends in your situation. You have many people to feed. You don't have that much money. You should be smart about it and how to divide it and how to be fair and even with it. So this is where we cut off with this, and now we're moving into a different halacha altogether. So, any questions? Are we good?
Just a quick question. When we said the special funds for Hashem, what does that mean? Yes, what does that mean?
Okay, so when people earn money, we know, this is nowadays even, that we give away maser, meaning everything I earn, 10% of what I earn, I give away for tzedakah.
So what's a tzedakah? What I'm saying is that is the shul considered to be tzedakah? Is for example, sponsoring classes, or?
But you can pay your tuition with tzedakah. You can pay. I mean, for girls for sure. If it's for a boy, again, ask your rabbis to what extent you can use maser money. But for me, a Rav once told me, traveling to my Rebbe for Yom Tov, and it costs me, and I want to travel, I want to be by him for Yom Tov, it makes me Yom Tov, I can use maser money for that. Okay, so people say paying your taxes in Israel, you can pay with your maser money because it's tzedakah. Okay, people who have extra maser money, or they don't want to pay their tuition with it, they feel it's more on their obligation, then they would buy themselves something in shul. They buy themselves an aliyah to the Torah or something. That's another thing you can do with maser money. I mean, you have to give it to tzedakah, but you're absolutely allowed to benefit from it. You don't just give it away, and yes, you give it to the poor, good, but you're also allowed to, let's say, buy a cipher that you're donating to a shul because you wanted that cipher. So you're allowing more people to learn on it, but still something you wanted to learn as well. So you're allowed to use maser money for that, as long as it's not just yours. You're putting it in for the shul. So you're allowed to benefit from this maser money. So having maser money is something that you can use to help you buy the meat for Yom Tov. You mix in with it. Obviously, not just maser money. You do have an obligation for your own, but you're allowed to mix in to make it better. Now, there's other things you can have money, maser money. Now, this is more relevant to Israel when you have to master your fruits and vegetables. You have to master. Now, nowadays, it's a little problem because it becomes tumah. You can't really bring it up, but that's another way of having maser money. Another way of having maser is not just money. It's from your own sheep, your own flock. You have to master your sheep. Every 10th has to be given for an offering. You're allowed to use that 10th to have more meat for Yom Tov, not for the Chagigah. because that's totally given away. You have to put some of your own money. But for more meat for Yom Tov, you're allowed to use that. So there's a lot of ways of having monies. Another thing, it's not just maser. It could be another thing. It could be money, that's it, that you pledged. You pledged, I don't know, $1,000 for argument's sake, to give to the Beit HaMikdash for Hashem. Now you're allowed to take that $1,000 and buy an offering with it. Yes, you're giving it to Hashem, but after all, you're buying a shlum and you're allowed to benefit from that meat. Of course, not 100% because you're obligated to bring a Chagigah, but when you have already fulfilled your mitzvah of Chagigah, just to have more meat, you're allowed to take that money to have more meat because it's one of your promises that you promised to bring an offering. As long as you have the meat, now you're good to go. Okay, so on that, now we're moving on. Now, new arguments. Umar Illa, Umar Ashlukish. Illa says in the name of Ashlukish, Hifrish Eser Bahamas Lechakigusai. So we have learned before the idea that someone can have multiple animals for an offering. So here we're going over to a case where someone has donated or he has put away 10 Bahamas, 10 animals for his Chagigah. Hikrif Chumash b'Yom Tov Rishon. On the first day Yom Tov, he managed to bring 5. Chozer Makrif Chumash b'Yom Tov Shani. Then he can come back on the second day and bring the second 5 because he offered 10. So the Shlukish said, yes, you're allowed to split it. Bring the first day 5 and the second day other 5. Rabbi Yochanan says, you have stopped, you're done with your mitzvah. Next day, yes, you can bring more to have more meat, but it's not Chagigah anymore. Chagigah that you're obligated to bring once in Yom Tov, it's only as long as you haven't stopped. So, before we continue with the Gemara, where does our brains go with what we have just learned? We're like, if somebody puts away 10 animals and he hasn't brought to slaughter the 10, he only brought 5, and next day he shows up with other 5 saying, I'm still busy with my Chagigah, that's what's going on here? Or maybe are we talking about someone who came with all 10 to the temple, to the Beit HaMikdash, and they only managed to catch up with 5 because they became late and the sun is going down and they have to bring the other. They told them, come back tomorrow for the other 5. What are we talking about here? I mean, what's the story? How can you tell me he cannot bring the next day? All that I just elaborated on, like what's the story talking about, is the Gemara going to dissect. It's just that the Gemara is training us again. This is how we are to take when we learn an argument. Like never, Rabbi Yochanan says never. If you stopped, you cannot go back the next day. I mean, what are they talking about? So Umar Reb Abba, the Lord Pelika, Reb Abba says they're not arguing. The difference between the two is kan bestam, kan b'mefurish. Bestam means he showed up with 10 animals. He only got to offer 5. Okay, so Rabbi Yochanan says you cannot bring other 5. You didn't sacrifice them, then they weren't part of your offering. And as Shlukish says you are allowed, is b'mefurish, because he clearly stated, I'm bringing 10. I want to offer 10. I only managed to bring 5 the first day. Okay, but I said I'll bring it 10. Therefore, Rabbi Shlukish says you can come back the next day because you have specified. You clearly said that you want to bring 10. So they're not arguing. It's just different stories. One is talking about someone who didn't say anything. He just showed up with 10 and then slaughtered only 5. The other one says that he specified. He clearly said I want 10. And he only offered 5. That means that he hasn't finished because he specified. Okay? So learning such an argument doesn't necessarily have to be an argument. They can be talking about different scenarios. So the Gemara asks, okay, so you want to say when he doesn't specify, who's tam, haicheduma. What is it talking about when he didn't specify anything? Maybe you want to say in a story when there was no more time in the day, that they ran out of time. He came with all 10, and he didn't say he wants to offer all 10. Remember, he didn't say nothing. But he came with the 10, And after 5, they ran out of time. They told him, hey, you can't bring any more today. You have to come back tomorrow because only until sunset we can offer. So the Gemara asks, who the the reason he hasn't brought the other 5 is because he ran out of time. How can you tell me he's not allowed to bring the next day? Yes, he didn't specify. Okay, he didn't say anything, but he showed up with 10 and he ran out of time. For sure, he can bring back the next day. How can Rabbi Yochanan say that when you don't say anything, you can't bring back the next day? Okay, so even with him specifying and with not specifying, there's more to the story. If they ran out of time of the day, then they should be able to offer the next day. So the Gemara says, no. There was time in the day. The reason he only offered 5, the less like achlan. He doesn't have enough people to eat. So that's why he only slaughtered 5, because he couldn't consume that much meat. He doesn't have that big of a family. So the Gemara asks, who the Lua Kreveni? If that's the reason why he didn't bring more than 5, because he only has enough people to eat 5, but he really has 10, the less like achlan, so he doesn't have more people. Then he finished his offering. If he didn't say anything and he only offered 5, even though he has 10 with him, and the reason he only offered 5 is because he only has enough people to eat 5, then how can you say he can come back tomorrow and bring more as the same offering? He can bring a new offering, but it's not that same offering anymore because he deliberately stopped. So what's going on here? What kind of story are we talking about that you can say, you cannot come back tomorrow? What kind of story is it? So the Gemara answers like this. It's talking about a scenario, the ikishu is b'yom, v'islat achlam. There's enough time in the day, and he has enough people to eat. B'dekama lua krevini. One second. Let me catch up here with my Gemara. So the Gemara says he has enough time in the day. He could have offered all 10, and he has enough people to eat 10. He just intentionally stopped. With the camera, I think, is crossed out here. Yeah, Lord Krivini, he just did not offer more. By not offering more, Shmameno Sharai Shrani. So by his actions, he has shown us that he is leaving over 5. Yes, I have 10 with me. Yes, I have plenty time in the day. Yes, I have enough people to eat all 10, but I only slaughtered 5 right now. By only slaughtering 5 and then you're walking away, you have shown that you have completed your act of your offering. You cannot come, for that Rabbi Yochanan says, you cannot come back tomorrow and bring more. And Rish Lakish would say, in such a case, okay, maybe you could. And the Gemara wants to bring proof that this is really the type of story they're talking about. And it also makes sense that this is what they're talking about. Why? Because when Reuven came, Umar Rabbi Yochanan, he said in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, that somebody who offered 10 animals for his offering, for his Chagigah, he's allowed to bring 5 in the first day, and then he can come back and offer another 5 in the second day. Who said that? Rabbi Yochanan. And Rabbi Yochanan is clearly the one who said here, I went too far, that you cannot, once you stop, you cannot offer any more in the second day. So the Gemara says, Kasha Naduda. So now you have a kasha, you have a question between Rabbi Yochanan himself. One place he says you're allowed to, one place you're not allowed to. So the Gemara says, Elulav Shemamana. So the proof of this is they're talking of different scenarios. They're not talking, the context matters here. What is the context, right? You can't take it out of context. What is he talking about? Kamba Stam and Kamba Mefarish. Here was when he didn't say anything. He didn't say anything and he brought 10, but after 5 he stopped and he had plenty of time and he has people to eat and still he stopped. Then he showed that he doesn't want to continue. Then he's not allowed to bring the next day. In Kamba Mefarish, in here, it would talk about when he clearly says, I want 10, and I'm only getting to do 5 for whatever reason right now. Since he clearly stated that he wants 10, he's allowed to come back the next day and finish off the other 5 that he has in his offering. Any questions here? Because this is where we're going to stop up with the Gemara. We're going to continue to the Mishnah, but the Gemara is basically just drilling this in more and more to make sure that this is basically what it is, that it's not really an argument, it's just different context of the story. The Gemara says, Itna Nama, so we also learned it, Rab Shimon bar Abba, Rab Yochanan, Rab Shimon, the son of Abba, said it in the name of Rab Yochanan. And we're going to go over to page 9a. Lo Shuna, Eilu Shloi Gumar. Aval Gumar, Chayzer Makri, which would mean like this. Lo Shuna, it doesn't mean that they're not allowed to continue offering the next day, Shloi Gumar, when they didn't finish. Aval Gumar, if he finished, then he can continue offering the next day. What did the Gemara just do with us? The Gemara is again saying something encryptic. Lo shuna, it's not learned that everything that we have learned here that you're not allowed to go and bring more offerings the next day. Shloi Gomer, when he didn't finish. Avul Gomer, if he finished, then he can continue offering. I mean, if he finished, what is he offering? Right? So this is a cryptic line. What are we talking about again? So this is again where the Gemara makes us start thinking, okay, what is he talking about? So the Gemara says, good, my Gomer. What do you mean he finished? If you're telling me that he finished his offering, then my makrev. Why is he telling me that Chayzer Makrev could come back the next day and finish his offering? You're telling me he's finished. So this is again a funny line. What are we reading here? The Gemara says this is how you're meant to read it. Elu shloi gumar hayoim. Not that he didn't finish. The day didn't finish. Gumar hayoim. Avul gumar. The day finished. The day ran out on him, and now he's out of time. Then Chayzer Makrev. Then he can come back the next day and bring his offering. So we have had multiple times today where the Gemara would just give us a half a sentence, a half a message, and we were like reading this and we would be puzzled, like, what are you talking about? If this is what you want to say it clearly, right? And here again, as long as he hasn't finished, but if he finished, then he can come back and bring more offerings. But he finished. So the Gemara says, no, not he finished. The day finished. If the day finished on him, then he can come back tomorrow because it clearly shows that he wanted to bring more. He just ran out of time. So that's it for today. Thank you so much. Any questions? Good, okay. Let me just save this spot. Thank you. See you next time.
Thank you.